From 2001 to 2005, I was taking classes at Meadville Lombard Theological Seminary, while completing my final years at Georgia Southern before I retired there, and before officially beginning my ministry with you folks. During this time, I would often preach sermons at the UU Fellowship of Statesboro over on Grady Street and at other UU churches in the area. Almost 20 years ago, on February 9th, 2003, I shared in Statesboro a sermon entitled, "Can You Say God?" It was a sermon in which I felt called to reclaim some religious language, and I actually started on those sermons before I heard that Bill Sinkford shared that plea with the entire association, that we reclaim some religious language. I later preached the sermon to a small fellowship that met out on St. Simon's Island, which now is the congregation I serve on Gloucester Street in Brunswick. They had a practice at that time of the speaker answering questions immediately after the sermon. You didn't move from the pulpit, you did the sermons and said, "Are there any questions?" It was a small group, kind of almost like a book club at that time. So after I completed the sermon, "Can You Say God?" I asked if there were any questions. Is Rappaport, a humanist curmudgeon of sorts, said, "I don't have a question, but I have a comment." I braced myself and said, "Well, go ahead." And Iz responded, "That was a goddamn good sermon." So Iz demonstrated that he could say God. Not exactly what I had in mind, but nonetheless, the word was lifted up. Since that time, our UU congregations have been more tolerant of some God talk being used by folks who find that meaningful. And we can even sing the words, as we just tried to do, if not asked to every Sunday. As our language has evolved to be more inclusive, our congregations have evolved somewhat as well. So here I am today in my sermon series on big questions, asking, who or what is God? And I asked the supreme knower of all known today, Wikipedia. Here is the first part of that response. In monotheistic thought, God is usually viewed as the supreme being, creator, and principal object of faith. God is typically conceived of as being omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, and omnibenevolent, as well as having an eternal and necessary existence. God is often thought to be incorporeal, invoking transcendence or immanence. Now, there have been many efforts to prove the existence of God. And when I was in seminary, we had to read about these proofs and learn about them. I mean, some of these dudes, and they were all dudes, had long formulas and charts and graphs they really had formulas with lots of interesting new words for me to learn. But I saw no proof, just speculation. I remained unconvinced that God can be proved, perhaps explained from a particular viewpoint, but not proven, just explained from that viewpoint. God is a word derived from the Old English, which was taken from a German word, and this word, when capitalized, is used to translate a host of other words that may be in scripture or other writings. The original scripture, of course, did not use the word God, but those words were translated as God in our English scripture writings. And these were used in other writings that an ultimate deity that many believed in and still do is described as whatever it was in the original and now described as God. Allah is the Arabic word for the same being. And there are many other names. But all of that does not matter to UUs, I think, as much as how we ourselves might conceive of and use that word. All words are tools to convey meaning. Do you use this word personally? And if so, what meaning do you or I attribute to it? I sent out a survey to our listserv and on Facebook asking you to share from your own perspective the response to the question, who or what is God? As I began drafting this sermon, I had 21 responses. 4 folks said they don't really think about or dwell on this at all. 6 people used the word love in their response. God is love. 3 referred to nature or energy. A couple of you gave more specific definitions tied to your own theology, for example, Buddhism or Wiccan. 1 person quoted me, they said, but I was actually quoting Forest Church, saying that God was that which is greater than us, but within us. And 1 used Paul Tillich's definition that God is the ground of being. None used the words described by Wikipedia for the all supreme being. Words like creator, who is omni everything. 1 of you sent a poem as a response that's worth sharing here. Here's that poem. The breath I take fills with air, yet I cannot see it, unless the bitter cold of winter shows it. My love inside I feel must be outwardly shown to manifest. The wind and the fresh green leaves of the trees, the birds that sing, the foam between my toes at the ocean shore. God is earth, the creatures, the marvels. God is in me. God is the creation of the cycle of life. I do not with my limited eyes see God. I feel God. That loving warmth is my joy. I like that. Some say God is a verb, but perhaps God is a feeling. In any case, for this poet, this person, it's inspirational. As a minister, I attempt to use words with others, especially in pastoral care, as tools to inspire and give comfort. And as a Unitarian Universalist pastor, that means sometimes using words that I may not use in my own spiritual practices, but I can translate, and I often do. I do translate when we're singing, praying, or listening to others. I can translate their words to something that's meaningful to me and back and forth, and I often encourage you to do the same. We are intentionally welcoming, and we should increase our tolerance and use of reverent language if we want to be more welcoming of all who need us in this broader community. My professor, David Bumball at Meadville Lombard, was an avowed humanist, but he knew the importance of this. He writes, quote, "We have manned the ramparts of reason and we're prepared to defend the citadel of the mind. But in the process, we have lost the ability to speak of that which is sacred, holy, of ultimate importance to us, the language which would allow us to enter into critical dialogue with the religious community." I've loved Bishop Shelby Spong's writing ever since I first read Saving the Bible from Fundamentalism. If you haven't read his works, I recommend them. And I think that his beliefs are not far from mine. And he does use the word God. He knows it has different meanings to different people, even like us, who maybe are heretics in most people's mind. Here's what he shares about the meaning of God. If the word God refers to the experience of recognizing that source of life which flows through the universe in its limitless forms, but which comes to self-conscious only in human beings, then the only way we can worship that which we call God is by living fully. And the more fully we live, the more that which is ultimate, real, and holy is seen in us. If the word God can be identified with the source of love that flows through the universe, it's a different way of thinking about it. Some of you describe God as love, always enhancing life but that is what love does, but only becoming self-conscious in human beings, then I disagree with that, by the way. I know dogs have a conscious of love, but they only becoming self-conscious in human beings, then the only way we can worship that which we call God is by loving wastefully. Wasteful love never stops to ask whether love is due or deserved. One simply gives it away. The more we can give love away, the more that which is ultimate, real, or holy will be visible in us. Then he says, if the word God can be understood to refer not to a being, but to the ground of being in which everything that exists is ultimately rooted, but which comes to self-conscious only in human beings, then the only way we can worship that which we call God is by finding the courage to be all that we can be, and then by allowing, indeed encouraging others to be all that they can be. The more we can be our deepest, fullest selves and enable others to be their deepest, fullest selves, the more our lives will reveal that which is ultimate, real, and holy. That then becomes the moment, I believe, that you and I can be said to have discovered what is the ultimate purpose of religion. True religion, he says, at its core, nothing more or less than a call to live fully, to love wastefully, and to be all that we can be. That is finally where life's meaning is found. All else is background music. John Shelby Spong. My challenge for you here today is that we be open and that we practice those principles and values of inclusivity that we hold dear. I know it's not that simple, but we can begin to have the conversations that will help us to understand each other. Perhaps when we get in our fellowship circles that we're going to have, we can begin to have the conversations that will help us understand each other and understand what each of us holds as sacred. So whether your beliefs or non-beliefs regarding God or the ultimate are based on theism, deism, pantheism, atheism, or agnosticism, whether you identify as a Buddhist, a Christian, a Muslim, humanist, Jew, Hindu, pagan, or just plain old Unitarian Universalist, or none of the above, or all of the above, I leave you with this hope. May the spirit of love and life fill you. May the Mother Goddess hold you. May the universe enfold you. May peace be with you. May the light of the world illuminate you. May the truth set you free. May the force be with you. May love guide you every step of the way. May the strength of your own mind and body give you courage. May this community lift you up, and on and on and on, including the words familiar to us all. May God bless you. May it be so.